Hi, good evening, everyone. We are holding in the middle of chapter 19. So I believe that perhaps we studied that, but I would like to start from 268 on the bottom. I want to share some of the themes of what we are going to be speaking about. So it should make it easy perhaps to run through the text. The first thing is that we have discovered that, and we will be discussing that the source or the residence of the godly soul is in Chokhmah, in wisdom, because wisdom is total nullification. I think last time, 2 weeks ago, we concentrated on the idea that humility, humbleness, is the greatest trait a man can possess, particularly in order for them to achieve their mission here on earth and to connect to God. So Moshe Rabbeinu, wasn't an orator. He couldn't even speak. He was a stutterer. What makes him so close to God like nobody else ever reached is because he was very humble. If I want to open myself to God, humility is one, not because I study Torah or I pray very well or I'm a great whatever, I do so much good, I give a lot of tzedakah, I do all the mitzvot. Somebody who feels that way, they're actually distancing themselves from God. The best way to connect is through humility. This is one point. So therefore, the opposite of holiness is, as we will discuss, have, like a dog, how. In Hebrew, have means give. Everywhere they go, what's in it for me? What? I don't want you, I want my share. What's my share? I'm going to make sure I get it. It's all about the ego. It's all about my achievements. It's all about my greatness. It's all about I want and I want and I want. That they are literally pushing God away. So if I were to summarize holiness, it is humility. It's not the greatest person who started out. Yes, Herman.
What would you define as humility?
Humility is
Silence.
the opposite of silence. Quiet, the opposite. Humility, I think I shared with you on many occasions in different contexts, but it resonates with me very well because I know someone personally who is that. It's my father. There is a mitzvah to enjoy the meal on Friday night. How do you enjoy the meal on Friday night? Whatever tastes good. So for you, it may be steak. For maybe me, it may be salmon. For you, it may be a kishke or a kugel or a latke, whatever it is. There is a mitzvah to enjoy. Someone who is humble, if he is served an ice cream tastes good, it's very yummy. They don't have a particular flavor. When they are asked by a waiter or by server, dessert is being served, an ice cream is going to be served, do you have any particular flavor? He would say, whatever is good for you to serve me. I will enjoy chocolate or vanilla or pecan or strawberry or raspberry, it doesn't matter, because you will enjoy it equally. It's all about enjoying the day. Someone who says, no, I need to make sure there is cherry on top of the ice cream because that's the way I like it, he lost it. He lost do you understand that? I grew up with my father the same way. It's not that he didn't know about his greatness, about his talents. My father is a teacher. My father would be asked to teach at great cost. He literally, on Shabbat morning, my mother likes to be in bed for late. So you would get up very early, run to the mikveh, teach, and then run back home to take care of us because we were very rowdy. And my mother couldn't sleep in the morning if we fight each other. So my father, by 9 o'clock, he already taught a class. He would come home catching his breath, literally cut a sliced bread, because in Israel there was no such thing as buying sliced bread until many years later. It was a loaf of bread, you had to cut it yourself and say, what do you want on the bread? You want olives on the bread? You want cucumber? You want butter or margarine? Take care of us, dress us, and tell us, don't forget to be on time in synagogue, and run back. Why? 9:30, you had to teach again. So by 10 o'clock, we had to be there to meet my father. He knew that he's able to teach so people can gain knowledge, but at the same time, he didn't make a big deal out of it. It wasn't that important for him so that everybody should know about his greatness, that everybody should appreciate or respect that. It's all about you have an ability to influence or teach someone, you are obligated. If you are totally silent and you say, I'm nobody, then you are missing God's talent. God has given each one of us a talent to be used. I used a personal example that resonates with me very, very well. So, does that answer the question, Herman?
Maybe. To some extent, you give me an example of humility. I don't think you can transcend that to the whole human race and tell them that's humility.
It's a shanda, because ego is at the heart of every single conflict. Nations, parties, politics. We're not going to talk politics, but we're going to talk Hasidic teachings. If you have two people who have different party lines, they can still see each other and respect each other and assist each other. There's nothing wrong with helping someone, taking them to the voting station to vote their heart's desire. And when the election are over and the results come out, it's not necessarily in my way, but I learn to respect, because that's how you live a life. The conflict begins when it's my way. What happens today? Today, everybody's to an extreme. Somebody said it last week or somewhere here, that in today's election, or the politicians, they say the other party is going to destroy America. It's going to destroy our country. And each one blames the other for total destruction. And therefore, we have to fight all the way, we have to protect ourselves. By the way, in Israel, it's no less. That's all the conflicts that are taking place. We're taken to the extreme. What do you mean taken to the extreme? It means we can't respect somebody else because our ego is so strong. So therefore, it's only my way. The fact that there can be somebody else that wins. Somebody told me many years back that the differences between the two big parties here in America are so minor, are so small, that if you take 100 topics and you put it in front of them, you will end up, and you assign each topic 10 points. Now, I'm not a politician, I'm not involved in politics, I don't know, I may be wrong, but that's the way I believe it's true. You'll find out that it's maybe 3 or 4%. In other words, the differences may be in 100 topics, there are various of opinions, but at the end of the day, everybody agrees so much on each one of those points, and the division is very, very minor. In other words, we can live with the other party winning and running the show, because unless the ego gets involved, now we're going to poke in their eyes, now we're going to take it to an extreme. And that's very unacceptable. Maybe I went over, maybe it's incorrect what I said, so I'll take it back, but that's how I feel. The same is, so again, I cannot preface it enough. The ego is at the cause of all our trouble. The Mishnah, last week on Friday night, somebody shared with me, the Mishnah tells us that there are 3 traits that drives a person out of the universe, cause someone to get destroyed, to destroy his personality. It's a Mishnah of ethics of our fathers. Akin'ah, jealousy, ve'atava, lust, desire for achievements, ve'akavod, honor. All three things drive a person out of the universe. It's a famous Mishnah. The man who spoke to me told me that those three appear in every person's life. It shows the different stages. When you're a child, the source of you fighting is jealousy. Why does he get to play with that truck? I want that truck too. And we start fighting. Why does he have a spoon in the sandbox? I want that spoon. It's all about jealousy. You grow up, you become a teenager, you get married. Now it's the lust, the desire, and the desire to get in food, in relationship, and drives people to act in an insane way. Later on in life, we've already achieved all that. It's all about kavod. It's all about honor. Who is going to get the credit? Who is going to get honored? You didn't spell my name correctly, and therefore I'm never going to speak to you anymore. So it goes in stages of each person's life, and they are all directly related to the ego. If someone is able to walk on their ego, then there can be somebody who thinks differently, or just don't respect me, or didn't do what they said they will do, but still we can continue living a life, realizing it's not the end of the world. So that's the first point that we're going to be discussing. And therefore, the opposite of egoless is ego-centered. Ego-centered is anywhere I go, I need to be the center of the stage. Anything I do, I need to get credit. I will never give you something unless I get back. It's all about have. Give me, give. When that happens, God is pushed away. So there can be people who study Torah all day, but there is no connection to God. There can be people who do a lot of good, but there is no connection to God. That's the first point the Rabbi is going to make. The second point the Rabbi is going to make is, why is this love that God embedded in us, that we study in chapter 18, that came to us from our forefathers, is a concealed, hidden love. And the Rabbi is going to talk about the two types of out of control, that love, that godly soul. One is, the Rabbi is going to talk about the idea of sleeping, and the other is called exile. The difference, that's a major difference. If I'm asleep, I'm not in control. I can't be speaking to you, I can't see you. But I am still in full control as soon as I wake up. What happens if someone touches me and wakes or yells at me? I wake up, I'm in full control. That's sleeping. Exile, if I'm in exile, if you put me in jail, I am totally out of control. There is no control because someone else needs to free me out of jail, out of the confinement. As long as I'm there, there's nothing I can do. There are two stages of this godly soul's expression that can be had. And one is at the level of sleepiness when it's awakened, or exile, which is totally out of control from the man. I'm giving you headlines of some points. The next point the Rabbi is going to talk about is what happens sometimes when the soul awakens from its sleep. It's able to break the jail for the expression of the soul, allow the soul to express itself fully all the way inwards, coming outwards to the most external aspects of the human, which are thought, speech, and action. It will express itself all the way. The animal soul, when it tries to confine and put the godly soul in jail, it starts from the external aspects. It says to you, let's convince you to think philosophically. I mean, you may not agree so much. You're still doing the mitzvah, but I don't understand it, so I don't care about that. And then you start speaking about it, how it doesn't make sense. And then it makes you say, skip one day, then skip once a week. So in other words, the animal soul will lead you into confinement by starting from the external aspect of the human all the way to the internal, where it takes the soul and puts it in jail where the soul cannot act. When the godly soul is awakened in the brains and wants to free the external part of the soul from jail, it will penetrate all the aspects, the internal and external at the same time. Therefore, even action itself will not be subdued to the animal soul. I hope I made myself clear, because as we'll study it, we'll get into details, and I will show it you some stories to demonstrate the points. Let's read a little bit. Page 268 on the bottom. Says the Rebbe, oh, and this is one more thing. The Rebbe says the word nature, that's nature, applied anytime you cannot explain something. Why the sun set every night? It's nature. Why the flowers grow a yellow flower, or roses will give you red or burgundy color? That's nature. It's all in the seed. It's nature. It's all about nature. In other words, in Hasidic teaching, in Kabbalah, anytime you are unable to explain a process, you call it nature. Nature is a magical word that accommodates everything. And in Judaism, in Kabbalah, we use nature quite the opposite. Nature will explain why the soul acts totally opposite the natural behavior of the rest of the creation. We spoke about flame. Fire is the only one who goes against nature, the only one who flickers and wants to ascend high. Anytime you ignite a fire, it will try to go as high as possible. Anytime you have an opportunity to remove the fire from the wick that's holding it, the flame will jump on it and respond, even though it will get notified. It's the only exception in our universe, where every other part of our universe desires to exist and to continue on. Fire is the opposite. Soul, a godly soul, is the exact same way. And therefore, why? That's its nature. That's the way God created it, that it will defy the principles of nature. Says the Rebbe, nature is an applied term for anything that is not in the realm of reason and comprehension. Here too, with regards to the soul's desire to unite with its source, the inference of the word nature is that the soul's will and desire is not based on reason, knowledge, and intelligence that can be understood, but rather is beyond the grasp of and comprehension of rational intelligence, because it wants to go against its very nature, against its very existence. It doesn't care to let go and cease from existing, which is against its nature. That's why God created it. Why? For this nature, page 269, for this nature is the soul's faculty of Chokhmah. And as discussed in the previous chapter, Chokhmah, intelligence, is a faculty that transcends comprehension, a faculty wherein the light of the blessed Ein Sof abides, and as a result, the soul is drawn to its source, the Ein Sof, with a longing beyond comprehension. So once we know godly soul is in Chokhmah, Chokhmah is non-existence. Chokhmah refuses to be non-existent. Thus, bless you, we see that the nature of the hidden love, that is, its quest, is the longing of the soul to be united with its source. The Alter Rebbe now goes on to explain the designation of hidden love. Now the Rabbi is going to talk, why is it hidden? Why is it concealed? Why shouldn't it, if there is a godly soul within me, how come that godly soul cannot be expressed all the time? Why is it always hidden? Now, this is a general principle in the whole realm of holiness. Holiness, Kedusha, is only that which derives from Chokhmah, called Kodesh HaElyon, supernal holiness. In other words, the word Kodesh refers to Chokhmah, while Kedusha refers to any manifestation of holiness is derived from Chokhmah. As Chokhmah represents nullification of self before God, only those matters that manifest this character of Chokhmah may be said to possess holiness. Those matters in which this characteristic is lack holiness as well. The Alter Rebbe continues speaking of Chokhmah. Says the Rebbe, Chokhmah, its very existence is nullified in the light of the blessed Ein Sof, which is clothed in it, and it is not a thing apart, as explained earlier. Therefore, the faculty is called Chokhmah, which consists of two words, Koachma, the power of humility, and abnegation. So the word Chokhmah in Hebrew means the power of nothing, because the very existence of Chokhmah is nothingness. As soon as something, it's not Chokhmah anymore. It is the housing for the godly soul. Godly soul is all about nullification. That's why the soul is compared to a flame. Flame is a physical example where it desires always to disappear and to cease from existing. The word ma literally means what? Denotes immateriality, as one might say when belittling himself, what am I? Thus, holiness refers to anything which, like Chokhmah, draws down from God and nullifies itself before Him. So they are in total nullification before God. That's the only place where godly soul can remain. If you become something, if you feel you're important, if you deserve honor, if you want to have accolades and respect and reward and credit, there's no godly soul. It goes away. It's like putting the fingers on the wick and extinguishing the flame. The flame cannot exist when there is no total nullification. The Rebbe said in Kabbalah, it's been brought many times, there are many, many people who studied a lot of Torah, but there was no godliness there because they used it to put down others, to demand certain benefits, and therefore they are lacking godliness in the study. This stands in direct contrast to the Klipa and Sitra Achra, to the opposite of holiness, from which are derived the souls of the Gentiles. Gentiles is referring to idol worshippers who act only for themselves, saying, give, give. And as Esau said, feed me, in order to be independent being and entities separated from God, as mentioned earlier, that Klippa is a separate and distinct entity, far removed from God, in direct contrast to Chokhmah, whose nature is humility and self-nullification. Therefore, those of the realm of Klippa, are described as dead, for wisdom, Chokhmah, gives life. Hence, that which is the opposite of Chokhmah lacks life. And it is written, they die without wisdom. That is, death is direct result of lack of wisdom, Chokhmah. Therefore, the nations that receive this life force from Klippa are considered dead. And just as the heathen nations are called dead, so too are the wicked and the sinners of Israel, but only before they are put to the test of sanctifying God's name, as we'll discuss in a moment. Facing such a test, the Chokhmah within them is aroused until it fills the entire soul with its spirit of self-nullification before God. At this point, they are alive once again. However, as long as they do not face this test, the level of Chokhmah is dormant within them. As the Alter Rebbe continues, the Rabbi is going to explain that whenever we are self-centered, we have ego, we are dead. Dead referring to empty of godly soul. When you do not have the ability to hold the flame because you are not selfless, you are not nullified, there is no godly life. And dead refers to spiritual death. There is no godly soul. It's not totally gone, but it's in a level of, as the Rabbi is going to say, sleeping, where you're out of control temporarily, but temporarily can be 50, 60 years. However, as the Rabbi is going to talk about, there is awakening. Sometimes it can awaken and be in full control. So again, you have some people that are, we call them spiritually dead because the godly soul is not there. What do you mean the godly soul is not there? It means the godly soul has no effect, does not express itself in any shape or form. That's why we call it hidden love, hidden godliness, because it's concealed. Concealed meaning it's asleep. It's not felt in any part of the human. Facing such a now the rabbi is going to continue. For the faculty of chokhmah in the divine soul, with the spark of godliness from the light of the blessed Ein Sof that is clothed in it, are in a state of exile in their body, within the animal soul of the realm of Klippa, in the left part of the heart, which reigns over them and dominates their body. This exile of the faculty of Chokhmah while the animal soul dominates the body echoes the esoteric doctrine of the exile of the Shekhinah, of godliness, since the Ein Sof, the endless light, abides in Chokhmah, as mentioned earlier. What the rabbi is saying is, whenever we allow the ego to be in control, we put the godly soul in jail. And in jail, they are totally confined to the limitation of jail. They cannot express themselves. You cannot say what you want. You cannot meet anybody. You cannot talk to anybody. There is no expression of the soul. The soul is not in a sleep state, but in exile state. Exile state, as I shared with you before, it is beyond our control to awaken it, to change that, until the essence of the godly soul, as we'll discuss later, soon, is in sleeping mode, is awakened, then it can break that jail. But that's why it's called hidden love, because you cannot awake it when you want. You cannot just feel that or connect to it at will, because it's in exile. Exile is beyond your control. For this reason, this love found in the divine soul, whose wish and desire is to unite with God, the fountainhead of all life, is called hidden love. An apparent contradiction in terms, love denotes a manifest emotion and is not at all hidden, yet it is called hidden only when it is obstructed by an alien entity and not because of any inherent quality of concealment, as the Alter Rebbe goes on to explain. In other words, what the Rabbi is saying, we call it concealed, hidden love. If it's love, it's an expression of emotions. If it's concealed, it's the opposite of that expression. So the Rebbe, there is a foreign entity that forces it into jail without the ability to express itself. So it's there, but it's not being expressed in any way, shape, or form. Why? For it is hidden and veiled in the case of the transgressors of Israel in the sackcloth of the Klippa. From the Klippa there enters into them a spirit of folly, which leads them to sin. As our sages remark, a person does not sin unless a spirit of folly enters into him. The word shtut, ashtus. Anybody heard the word shtus? Foolishness. Huh? Stupidity, foolishness is a essence, is a very main important theme in Judaism regarding sin. That's why a woman who had been concealed or hiding with another man, how do we call it? How is she called? There is a tractate in the Talmud devoted to that. Sota. Anybody heard the word sota? You heard, Harry, you heard? Why is it called sota? From the word shtut. The rabbis tell us a person will not sin unless the spirit of foolishness entered their mind to convince them that it's okay. Nobody will find out I'm still connected to the right people, which is foolishness because it's not true. Once someone commits a sin, they cut themselves off of God. If they offend or transgress a commitment they make to each other, and they did not keep that commitment, it's foolishness to think that life continues and it's normal, business as usual. It's not business as usual anymore, but it's the foolishness that enters our mind. So back to our discussion here, says the Rebbe, the reason the person is able to sin is because he's convinced wholeheartedly that by doing sin, by eating not kosher, or whatever it's the wrong against offending God, he is still not cutting himself away from God, even though it's not true. As soon as someone sins, God stops connecting with that person. But the reason he's pulled into it is because the godly soul is in jail and she cannot express her point of view to tell the truth. And therefore, the person continues on with the behavior, thinking to himself that it is okay. Any questions so far? No questions. Can we move on? Herman, do I have permission?
I have a question.
Yes.
So if you commit a sin, you do not connect to God?
We will discuss it at great length. You are correct, 100%. I should tell you that everything we discuss applies to a relationship in a marriage. Those of us who are blessed to be married, it's the same exact way. There is no difference. Our marriage is a reflection of the connection between a Jew and God. We're married to God. Everything I share with you is discuss the relationship between us and God because it's applicable to everybody. But for married people, they can take notes. So when my wife says dinner is served at 6, by the way, we had it many times. She says to me, there is a lunch at 3 o'clock. I'll never forget. At 3 o'clock lunch and we have guests. So I need you to be home by 3 o'clock. 3:30 was lunch. Be home by 3 o'clock to change, to freshen yourself, to take care of the kids. But people called me up and they needed me. It's an hospice. I needed to go to, I got a call for hospice. Now, I could have said to the people who called me, I cannot be there, in an hour. I can be there at 5 o'clock. And it's okay. It's not the end of the world. But I said to myself, come on, let me go. I'm sure my wife will understand. You're laughing, right? Why are you laughing? Because it's stupid. It's stupid. It's called stupidity, right? Ashtus. I paid very dearly. I learned my lesson. The idea is with the concealed soul, you don't learn the lesson. So when we transgress once, we don't even see. God does not come say, bad boy, bad girl. He doesn't say that. So what happens? We repeat. And as we repeat, it becomes a norm. I think there is so much to be said about that. A study showed that 98 or 94% of divorces started with a very small minor issue, and it kept growing because he did not say good morning, dear, when he left the house in the morning. She was sure that he did something wrong last night. That's why he didn't say that. So when he came home, there was no dinner ready because she's already upset, suspecting. There is no dinner. You don't care about me. Okay, so I'm going to leave early or whatever. And it grows. That's the case because when people get married in our universe and today, not like 100 years ago, where there was no much preparation. I'm not talking the Jewish world, even a non-Jewish world, where it was arranged marriage, right? You married usually someone in the same village, same town, yet they did live a very happy life. No matter what you think and what they convince you, the people from the shtetl 100 years ago, the people from a big city, they lived in London, they lived in Paris. It doesn't matter. When they find their love of their life in college, university, they will end up living married for how long? For the rest of their life. There was divorces. Divorce existed, but very little. And they're very happy in most cases. I'm sure you can, we know about sometimes you had no choice because of the financial. We discussed it in a JLI because financially you couldn't survive being single, or you wanted to have children, or it was a stigma, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, majority of couples did enjoy a happy life. Today, before you get married, there is so much research. Instagram, Facebook. Yesterday I drove from Miami. I spoke to a mother of a child. that is in the business of getting married. I'm not exaggerating because I look at the clock. By the time we're done, it was 55 minutes. And a big part of it is about the research that she's doing to help her son, to the point that her son is calling her the Secret Service. He calls her the Mossad. And came to a point that he said he don't want her. So now, when he shares a name that he's about to date, he does not share the last name of that person. So she shouldn't do research on her own. She was asking me what's the right approach. But the point is, today, before you date somebody or after the first date, you know everything there is to know. In fact, we or people ask for medical records even today. When I have my children date, I am asking for a medical record if there is a reason, and we get it. We get a release from the family, from the couple, from the parents, and we reach out to the doctor and asking for a medical record. Sometimes I would put a doctor to be in touch with that doctor, so they see we are professionals, so to tell us, and yet. So many couples, majority of marriages end up in divorce. Not majority, high majority. Today, it's a very high number. Part of the reason is because of the foolishness. People don't act properly, fooling themselves into, she don't care, he's not going to find out. This is called foolishness. Sometimes it's a true, honest mistake, but we need to learn from it. Sometimes it's talking yourself into that nobody will discover and nothing bad will happen. Back to Tanya. So that's the idea of foolishness.
Do you actually ask for medical records in real life of potential?
Thank God I'm blessed with many children that are married. Each time, before we allow the child to date, we find out if there is any medical issue. And if we discover, if they lie, if they don't tell the truth, that would be a grave sin. So that's one. Later on, the child, if we see, because this is, you don't know if it's going to work out. It's before they even see that person. If it's serious, meaning it went 4 or 5 times and they see that they're getting there, he or she must ask, are there any issues I should know about? In addition to all that, we sometimes, not in all cases, but sometimes because there is something in the family or we were told about something, because we made a research, we are asking for medical records. And not once and not twice we ask, because not every one of the dating, they end up marrying that person. So it's much more than the number of kids. We ask for medical records, we receive the medical records. Sometimes I had questions because it's a family. In the family, there was an issue. We want to make sure it's not hereditary. We had to make sure it's not something that will affect all the other siblings, but only specific to one person. There was a situation of mana, you know, man. No, you don't know. There was some issues though with other family members that we needed our doctors to advise. And sometimes I asked the local doctor, to reach out to their doctor to discuss the family in general, because it's in the entire family. So medical record is, in my opinion, it's a must. You need to know what you get into. Yesterday when I was driving, I heard from that mother that the child dated, and the first date, she told them that she was a victim of rape, and she ended up in a mental institution for about 2-3 months. And the mother said, that's why you need for me to make the research. So that's how it all started, that the mother is making the research before, but there's so much she finds so much about the potential that the child said, enough, I don't want you anymore. I would like to connect with that person and then let me make the decision. But this is a very difficult situation today. Part of the reason is the foolishness. People are fooling themselves, thinking that it's, she or he are not going to mind. Back to God, the only reason a person sins is because of the spirit of folly, spirit of foolishness, leading themselves into the belief that God does not mind, God does not care, it's only once. In fact, the Talmud says, and by the way, it applies in relationship 100%, that once a person commits a sin 3 times, it becomes as if there is no sin anymore. In other words, once you cheat, and it applies to every sin. So if I learn to cheat once, twice, 3 times, it's over. Now it does not even feel like a sin. The Tanya later on will explain. Imagine you wear a garment and you put a stain, you pour ink into under a shirt. The first time you poured, it covers only the external outside. What happens if you pour one more time? Now it penetrates that you can see the stain from inside, assuming it's a very thick material. If you pour a third time, it will rip, it will tear that part and make it a hole. Once there is a hole, there is no more stain. You cannot stain it anymore. In other words, it doesn't feel like a sin. It feels like we all do it. It's normal already. So we call it foolishness because doing it the first time made my conscience feel bad. Why the 4th or 5th time it's not? The answer is foolishness. I'm fooling myself into because I didn't get caught or nobody bothered me. I let myself. So if I learn to speed or to cross a red light, the first time I said, oh gosh, I hope nobody saw it. Second time you say, I hope no one is going to stop me. I did it the third time. After that, you can do, it's a non-issue. Nobody knows what's the problem. You ask, what's the problem? As the Alter Rebbe explains further, page 272. The foolishness consists of self-delusion that one remains a good Jew in spite of his sins. Again, you can change it, a good husband, a good wife. In a relationship in a marriage, it's the exact same way. An insensitivity to the serious breach that his sin creates between himself and God. If a Jew felt how each sinful act tore him away from God, he would never sin. For after all, every Jew's love of God is so strong that he is prepared to sacrifice his very life for God, as discussed in the previous chapter. It is only that the spirit of folly dulls his senses so that he does not feel the wrench caused by each sin. However, I hope everybody can understand what I'm saying. However, if his senses are so dulled, why is it that even the worst sinner will willingly sacrifice his life for God when his faith is put to the test? In answer, the Alter Rebbe explains that the Kalipa can obstruct only those matters that do not directly affect the godly soul's level of Chokhmah. However, in such matters of faith, a derivative of Chokhmah, Klipa can neither penetrate nor obstruct. Consequently, in such matters, the Jew is aware that to succumb to sin would mean being torn away from God, and therefore he will readily lay down his life rather than sin. This, the Alter Rebbe now goes on to explain. So let me summarize. Whenever it comes to a normal sin, we fool ourselves, and I'm included, don't think that I'm any different. We fool ourselves into thinking that we're not separated from God, and therefore I'll ask forgiveness later on. I'm sure God will understand because I'm very hungry now, whatever it is. What happens if someone wants to touch the core, the essence of my godly soul that exists in the brains in Chokhmah? Now, no one is going to allow me. So if someone were to ask a simple Jew to worship idols, he knows worshiping idols is preferring someone over God. Now he feels he's totally separated from God, and therefore he would say no. He will refuse to do that. You know what happened then? As I told you, the godly soul in Chokhmah is in a state of sleeping. But once you call the name of a person, you wake them up. Once you wake them up, it will penetrate the entire existence, and it will not allow the person to misbehave even in the most external aspect, which is action. And I'm going to show you a story, many stories. One story of Hannah and her 7 sons. Anybody heard of Hannah and her 7 sons? Linda?
Yeah.
There was before Hannah and 7 sons, I'm going to show the story of Hanukkah. The Greeks were convincing the Jews and forcing them philosophically and by force to disobey God, to follow the Greek philosophy about the body, not the spirit, not the soul. Most Jews agreed and accepted. We call them mityavnim. Yevanim is Greek in Hebrew. Yavan is Greece. Yevanim are Greek people. Mityavnim are Jewish people who became adopting the Greek mythology, where there is only body, the Olympic, Mount Olympus, all the Olympic games come from Greece, the torch. It's just about body, not soul. What happened that changed everything? In Modi'in. Modi'in is a town not far from Jerusalem. The Greeks came in and forced the Jews to put a pig on an altar and worship it and slaughter a pig. And that's when it says no more. We are not going to worship other idols, let alone a pig. That's when Mattathias says to his sons, we can't take it anymore. The miracle of Hanukkah was not about the victory over the Greeks, actually. The miracle is about the victory of the spirit of the Jewish soul over the rest of the bodies, that the Jewish people joined forces because it didn't make sense. Majority of Jews were following the Hellenist belief. They were following Greeks, the Greek mythology. They were not worshiping God. They were not going to the Holy Temple, even though the Holy Temple existed. They were not praying. They were not studying Torah. They disobeyed. They stopped doing circumcision because you hurt your body. It's inappropriate. They did not keep Shabbat. They had a day of rest, but not on Shabbat. They did all that was right in the Torah. The Greeks did not hate the Jew. They hated the Jewish religion. They hated God. So they didn't want to kill the Jews because the Jews are very smart people. They wanted the Jewish people to follow customs and rules as long as they make sense. If they didn't make sense, then it's because of spirituality. You can't do that. When Mattathias came with his 4 sons or 5 sons, and they said, that's it, enough, everybody says, that's it. They touch the core of the Jew. By the way, that's according to Kabbalah, is why they found 1 jug of oil. Anybody knows the story that they found? The question that the Kabbalah is asking, why God made that 1 jug of, if God wanted them to have pure oil when they entered the temple, he could have given them a miracle, a case of oil jars. Why 1 small jug? Says the Kabbalah, it represents the essence of the miracle. All the oils that in the temple were still there, except they removed the seal of the high priest, contaminating them. But the oil still had the quality of the oil, except spiritually. You can't tell the difference between them, but spiritually, the seal of the high priest was gone, except meaning that the Jewish people were already contaminated by the Greek mythology. But there was 1 jug. the soul, the essence of the soul in Chokhmah that remained concealed, hidden. Remember, we talk about the hidden love? That jug was found where? Deep in the ground, was concealed. But once it was unearthed, that's where they were able to light the menorah, representing spirituality, and it affected the entire Jewish people. The essence of the soul resides in Chokhmah, in the brains. And that essence of the soul, when awakened, when you touch it, when you tell someone, a Jewish person when you tell a Jewish person, worship idol, or separate yourself from God, they will blow up and refuse to do anything. As long as you ask them, let's not keep kosher, let's not, they fool themselves into thinking that they are not separated from God, although the separation is there. I'm guilty of the same crime, by the way. It's not, I'm not looking at you, I'm not pointing a finger. When I sin, and I sin like every other human being, it's because I fool myself into thinking that I'm not totally separated from God, but it's not true. When it comes to idol worshiping, or a point where it is about clearly separating ourselves from God, we stand on our feet and we say, no way, we will not allow. Here's another story. Before Hannah and our 7 sons, maybe I'll share it later. This is a story that happened. I have few more stories, but here is one more. There was a non-Jew rich man who wasn't blessed with children. One day he adopted an orphan, a Jewish child that was orphaned, who was killed by pogroms by his father and mother. His name was Fievel, a Jewish name, Fievel. And one day but he never told the child that he's passed. The child always was under the impression that he has a natural father and mother. One day, I think he's turned about 7 or 8 years old. His father says, we need to baptize you. So before you're going to get baptized, you're going to go to church, you're going to go into the water, we're going to spend money on clothing, nice shoes, nice clothes, and we're going to have a nice party. It's going to be a very special day. And the child said, sure. As the days come close to the day, to the party, he turned to his father and he says, what's the difference? What does that celebration of baptism will make me? Why is it important? So his father says, nothing. There is no difference between the way you live now and then the way you live the day after, except right now your name is Fievel. Tomorrow or the next after that, you're going to be called Ivan. But there is no difference except your name is going to be changed to Ivan. The child says, why? And his father says, the adoptive father told him the truth. He says, your father and mother were Jewish. So he went and researched, discovered a little bit. He was a child. I don't know even what he found out. By the way, this story is in the record. It appears in many, many places. And the next day he turned to his father and he says, no way. I'm not gonna, if you tell me that the name would change from five-ish to Ivan, that's what the baptism gonna do? I'm not gonna let. His father said, why? He says, because I was born Jewish, right? Changing my name to Ivan makes me not Jewish, right? He said, yeah. He says, I don't want to. His father said, you had no choice. He says, I'm not going to. And he went onto the roof and jumped. And the rabbis are talking about the fact that he had no idea what Judaism is about. He didn't know about sin. He didn't know about right and wrong. He didn't know about the Jewish people being chased. He wasn't aware. He never had the time to discover it. But something touched the core, the essence, the chokhmah, where the essence of the godly soul. That's the difference between asleep versus in exile. In our day-to-day life, we misbehave because we're in exile. The godly soul is in exile. That's why it's called hidden. But the essence of the soul in the brains, in chokhmah, is in a state of sleep when the animal soul is in control. State of sleep can be awakened. That child, when he was told that tomorrow you're going to be Ivan, today you're Fievel, tomorrow you're going to be Ivan, he refused. He says, no way, I will never, I am willing to sacrifice everything. I will not allow it to be changed. And the only way is because that essence of godliness was asleep. And once it was touched, woken up, and without coming, it doesn't make sense, but he refused. By the way, today, we see it the same thing in Israel, unfortunately. When people come and are touching the core, they awaken something within the Jew in Israel. Unfortunately, now there is infighting again, which is so sad. But at the beginning, the first people who are there going, knowing that there is more than 50% chance they will not make back alive. And yet the unity between soldiers in units is beyond explanation. It's just because there are godly soul, the essence was awakened, and therefore it transcends the boundaries of humanity. So nobody is going to stop them. So we have many people who are not drafted that are totally anti-religion. They were totally anti-religion, and now they're coming and say, I keep Shabbat. We have I don't want to get into details because people living locally, but so many people I assisted in learning how to keep Shabbat. They change their homes to keep kosher. How does that affect the war in Israel? Because they feel that they want to express their Judaism and limit themselves. They were raised anti-religion. It's not their fault. They were raised that Shabbat, you want to have fun. You do whatever, makes you feel good. You eat whatever makes you taste good. Now they are limiting themselves. It's all from the essence of the soul that was awakened. We are going to stop here and continue God willing next week. Thank you very much, everyone. Why not? Oh, next week is, no, Sunday.
You told us you didn't know if you were going to be up to teaching us
Ne-
to celebrate.
No, but next week, Sunday is Purim. Monday, we're going to meet that one.
Okay.